Hello my internet friends, welcome back to another live stream episode of Alissa and Jay. In today's video, I want to talk about the video settings of A6700. But before that, if you don't know who I am Jay from Alissa and Jay. We have a website called alissajay.com, which you can check it out here. And we do have a lot of photo, video, travel vlogs and camera review kind of content. If you go to the tech, you'll be redirected to this page where I discuss a lot of things. And if you're new to photography, you can click on Art of Photography, where I have the basics of photography that will be helpful for you. And in every post, I plan to have this table of contents, which will describe the list of things that I have in the page. Also, I have the Sony help guides. So if you own any of these cameras, you can click on these help guides. That will take you to this help guide page. And if you have any doubts, you can always click on the search icon and you can type video or video, right? So you can click on this and you have everything that you might need in these results. So if you click on this, for example, video light mode, which I was searching for yesterday, here is what is there. So as it says here, video light is actually an external purchase that you need to buy, and then you can set it up with the camera. So that's an example, right? Before we go into this topic, let me just explain. I have several videos related to the cameras on the topic of A6700. You can go to my channel Alissa and Jay. You can search for A6700 and you will get tons of videos regarding that camera. So I love these cameras, and I see a lot of posts in my favorite community, A6700, regarding how to set up the camera, what are the best settings, and how to get certain results in certain way. And I have decided to take the things up on my hands and explain to you guys, spending my time. And yeah, here we are. So if you have any doubts during the live stream, you can put it up in the chat. I will reply to you guys at the end of every session or whenever I have the time, right? And I want this session to be very interactive so that you guys get benefit out of your time that you're spending watching this live stream. This will again go as a video replay, which you can watch at a later point of time as well. All right, so the setup that I have right here is on the left corner. I have the OBS Studio. So if I'm looking there, which means that I'm trying to switch between the screens. So here I have my A6700. The camera that's recording this A6700 is A7C2, paired with G Master 16 to 35mm f2.8 lens, set at f6.3 actually, and this is the kind of bokeh you get. And we have another view, the screen and me. So why do I have to see this? The screen is over here, and here, if I'm looking here, it means I'm looking at the chat. If there's any chat, I will look at that place and let you know. All right, so let's start with entering into the formats that is available for A6700. And to explain that part, you need to go and understand the different available options, format options that's there. Right, so I have consolidated pretty much everything between A7C2 and the A6700, which I have a separate video in our channel. And for this video, I'm not going to do this part, but I'm going to show you this screen. Here I compare the video options that's available between several other camera systems and Sony as well. So if you look at these copies, for example, let me go to Panasonic. If you were to record 10-bit videos, or if you were to record all intra videos, it's going to have a ton of high bitrate options. So what it means that is like you get a lot of information saved if you're recording the video at 800 megabits per second, and whatever is shown here is in bits per second, not bytes per second. So I want to first talk about how whenever a camera shows the bitrate versus the memory card shows the bitrate, how is it different, right? So let me start with that. So here I have this 128 gigabyte, like I said, right? 128 gigabyte card that can write to the card at the speed of 260 megabytes per second. All right, so here it says 300 megabytes per second. It's nothing but the read speed of the card. If it says it doesn't say here what is the write speed of the card, which you have to check on the package. So make sure you check the package for what is the write speed of the card. For example, for the cards like these, I have several other cards as well. So there are these cards from Sony. Here it says R for read and W for write. So we can check what is the optimal read and write speed for A6700 from the help guide page. Let me show you in a bit. So for these cards, as you can see here, this is V30 card, this is also V30 card, but this is different from this with the write speed. Write speed is 70 here, this is the write speed with 45. These are important when it comes to choosing the right format for your video recording options. This is the highest write speed that's available for a SD card. Maybe there are some cards with 280 megabits per second, but here I have what I have here is 260 megabits per second. So let's go to the help guide and check what are the bitrate recording options. All right, so let's switch back to this page. Okay, so here we have the help guide. And let me just put a quick bitrate. All right, so here we can see a lot of bitrate options. And instead, I think sometimes you need to find the right keyword to search for the right answers. In that case, we can choose something like finding the menu, customizing the camera. So I can do memory card. Okay, this is what it takes to find the right answers, right? Notes on memory card. So this is something you can check. Okay, here it's very clear memory cards that can be used. So let's talk about this first. For different recording formats, we need different type of memory cards. So the card that we have is a V90 card that can write up to 260 megabits per second. That can record in these two formats. So it requires either V90 card, UHS type 2 or higher. So XAVC SI is the highest possible quality that you can get from the A6700. This is the all intra format, which means that the photos are saved. I mean, the video is saved in the format of photos, multiple JPEG images that's been saved, but these images are not compressed. So these are like saved in a combination in a very unoptimized algorithm. So when it comes to the editing software, when you run through the playback timeline, it's going to play the photos and it's going to be much smoother because it's not too compressed. So the software doesn't need to decompress it. When it comes to the other formats, for example, HS, it's called high efficiency formats. These formats compress in a way that it skips a few frames, and later in the decompression, it uses the algorithm to obtain back those frames using the extrapolation. So that's why these are more efficient in storage as well as recording bit rates. But the problem with this is it's going to take a toll on your computer. So we're going to discuss on that topic as well. So these are the different type of cards that you might need. Okay, so before we even talk about what is the optimal format to record, we need to talk about this. So I have a V90 card, I have a UHS type 2 card. So my data that I'm getting might be different from the cards that you use. So if you were to use these cards, like whatever the other low bitrate cards that you have, for example, if you were to use these cards, you may not be able to use them because these are, I'm not sure if these are UHS. Yeah, these are called UHS type 2 cards. They have 2 rows of pins. But on the other hand, these are UHS 1 card, so they just have like one row of pins. So it's very easy to differentiate, but even still, you need to make sure that you have the right speed, correct right speed. So if not, then you will not be able to record. So if you ask me the question why I have a Fujifilm X100VI on the table, it's because I find that Fujifilm X100VI has more video-centric recording options to get cinematic footage than the A6700. So I want to demonstrate that a bit, and I wish A6700 has those features, but unfortunately we do not. So I want to keep it here so that you get to understand the idea about cinematic footage, right? So that's what we are targeting. And yeah, let me switch back to this view. So these are the basic things you need to understand, and if you have any doubts related to videos, you can always go here and use the help guide. Okay, with that said, let's jump into the camera view. For the time being, I think I will keep the Fujifilm camera aside, and let's talk about the customization options. All right, so if you have any questions, you can let me know in the chat. I will be happy to answer it right away. Let's make it more interactive. Yeah, otherwise my energy will be low and I'll be monotonous. All right, so this is the camera A6700. All right, so this is a hybrid camera. It's not a video camera. I have reiterated this point to several people several times. You cannot expect to record much longer videos in one go using this camera, but this will have been helpful for several videos in this channel, which you can check it out. The past 50 videos, I would say, was recorded using this camera. So it's a very capable camera. The output from this camera is amazing. And I'm going to talk about how I set this camera for a quick run and gun shoot and how I bring back that footage and edit in the post. And editing is the crucial part, actually. Getting the footage is one thing, editing them is another nightmare when it comes to having very compressed modes. So I hope you guys get that part clear. So let's start with manual mode. I always shoot in manual mode because it gives me the maximum control. So I'm not going to switch to any other modes. Manual is my most preferred mode. And how I set up this camera is depending on the lens, right? So here I have a focus hold button. Sometimes you may use, sometimes you may not use. When you put this camera on a cage, it might be difficult to access, but I do not access the autofocus manual focus switch from the camera, which you can actually do, but I use this autofocus manual focus switch on the lens to switch between the autofocus and manual focus modes. Why do we switch to manual focus? Sometimes you don't want all the people to be selected by the camera. If you're shooting a landscape and a lot of people are there in the foreground, you might want to have the landscape. So in those situations, autofocus, manual focus modes will come in handy. And coming to the rear part, we have several options, right? So first, let me start with this. I have set the C2 for autofocus area mode. So it's easier for me to switch between the autofocus area. So sometimes I want spot autofocus, sometimes I want zone autofocus. If I know that subject is in the zone, then it would be easier for me to switch between the zones so that it detects the face in that zone. And if the subject is so tiny on the frame, I might want to switch it to spot autofocus that's so small and it can focus on spot on the tiny subject. So it's convenient for me to switch between the autofocus area modes. And let me show you this way. So I have it here. So this button here, this button I use the C2 or something, C1 button to switch between the live view and the display mode. So it switches between the viewfinder and the monitor. It's a very convenient way of switching. I know it's hard to press, and that's why I put it there, so I don't accidentally press it, but when I need to press it, it's there. It's convenient for me to switch. It's a very important thing to lock which display you want to shoot. I usually don't go for this. but right now I think it's in the sensor mode. Okay, see, even if I put my hand on the sensor, it's not switching to the EVF. So even if I put the camera close to my body like this, it's not going to switch to the EVF mode. So that's something I have done for the video mode. And thirdly, this button, this dial to switch between photo and video mode is what I predominantly use, so that I keep the settings of the photos, because I shoot photos and videos, and it's important for me to switch between them conveniently without changing a few settings, like for example white balance, aperture and stuff. So for that, the first thing I would do, or first thing I have done, is go here. Okay, let me show you the first thing to do here. Hope you can see. All right, so let's go here. I don't see many people talk about this, because this is a function from a Panasonic kind of person, because they usually don't come with video and photo mode, but I find this one very helpful in Sony cameras. So let me talk about this. So you have to go to dial customize or operation customize. This is operation customize, and different set for stills and movies. Once you go in that, it shows you can set different settings for still images and movie mode, and you can select which settings you want to keep, which settings you want to switch. So I switch the shutter speed, ISO. These will be different in the video mode, so I will explain by demonstrating them. And the rest I keep it same between photos and video mode. And I have changed the picture profile as well, and the focus mode will be the same, because I want to have a consistent focus operating method for me between the photos and videos. All right, so now that I have set this up, I will show you how it changes between photo and video mode. All right, so I have changed it here, and you can see the ISO. Just notice the ISO, shutter speed, and this aperture, right? Aperture is f1.4, and when I switch to the video mode, it changes to ISO 2500. That's actually the second base ISO of the Sony A6700 when shooting log, and the shutter speed went to 200, right? 1/200. I don't want that. I want 1/200. Sorry, 1/125, because my frame rate is 60. I use this camera to predominantly shoot 4K 60 frames per second. So this is the first thing I would set up. So usually, if it's the daylight, I would keep the ISO at, yeah, I will come back to this. There's an easy way to set up the dial as well. So if it's daylight, I keep the ISO at 800. If it is nighttime or evening time, I would push it to 2500. So those two are my main ISOs that I will be shooting with. Now, okay, so now that you understand the benefit of having that still different menus for still and photos, you can see here it changed back to the photo menu. And when we talk about the picture profiles, I will come back to this function button menu setup as well. So let me quickly touch upon the picture profiles, and we will get back. I think I removed the picture profile. So in depth review, I will discuss that further. Okay, so for the outer layout, let me talk about that for a bit. So here we have the C3 button for silent mode on and off for photos, and for videos it's going to display the frame rate. So it's convenient for me to switch between 24 frames per second and 60 frames per second with the C3 button. There is no silent mode or any other mode for videos, so this is convenient for movies. And it can also change to 120 frames per second. So this is the way I shoot high frame rates videos, and I don't use the SNQ mode at all. And when it comes to function, we will discuss this further. Okay, we'll discuss this menu further. And here for the autofocus button, I will use it for tracking. So this is something very helpful for me. I come from Nikon cameras, so I predominantly used to use the back button focusing, so this is helpful in tracking shots. And when it comes to this one, this is a very important button, right? So here we can see that this is a clear image zoom function. It says, yeah, available setting, photo to video. All right, so there's something wrong with the clear image zoom. Okay, but I have set this one for clear image zoom, which is very handy. Okay, so what it says is I have to make it to digital. I have to change the clear image zoom to digital. So let's see that setting as well. Okay, let's do that now. In zoom functions, you can set the zoom to, okay, yeah, this is the problem, right? In 120 frames per second mode, you cannot do that, so you need to change it back to 60 frames per second, and then you can do the clear image zoom. So it works fantastic if you were to have it in a button format. So let me again demonstrate that to you. So here I have the ISO button set to clear image zoom, and when I press that, you can zoom in. So you can just change it in 0.1 stops, or you can just press this button again to change it in 1/3 of 0.1 stops. So that's very convenient how you want to change. If you want quick change or if you want slower change, this works. All right, so this is one way. And if you ask me, hey, you changed the ISO button to something else, so what about the ISO now? How do you change it? And the answer is I use the dial, the regular dial, to change the ISO. You can see the ISO changes pretty well. So this is what I do. It's very convenient for me in quick setup option, right? So these are the setups. So here frame rate, here playback, here ISO is the clear image zoom. Here I have the drive mode. So drive mode is also something I have customized to self timer. If you put the camera on the tripod, it's going to require some kind of a self timer, which I usually use. And here the display button will change through different display options. The one I think is very useful is actually the leveling option, the leveling display and the histogram. So these two are something I scroll between, and you can set this the way you want it. So for example, there are like 5-6 options when it comes to setting up the monitor. How you can set up the only things that you want is through this one. So if I go to this part, I go to the viewfinder monitor, and you can see here there is a list of settings that you can choose as a set for monitor. So let me explain that part. Right, so monitor brightness, finder frame rate, so this is the setting which I use to make it manual or auto. So if you put it in auto, if you bring your finger or your body closer to the sensor, it's gonna switch. I have set it to manual so it wouldn't switch. And I think it's in the display option. Yeah, here. So in this display option, we can select what to display or not. Okay, I think I cannot find, so let's do a quick check on that. So this is what I do, right? When I cannot find a setting, I quickly go to the help guide. I try to find display, right? So if you check this display, and Here we see display quality, display media info. Right, so here it's not there. So this is the place where the menu is kind of confusing. So in the menu, photo or video shooting mode, under media, display media info. So this is where you can find it. This is something we have to learn, right? Learn to search on the help guide. So it's not under the setup, rather it's over here. So here, if you go to display media info for photos and videos, okay, it's not the one that I was looking for, unfortunately. So we will go to okay. Okay, so I think I cannot find it. Basically, you can set to whatever you want to show it. Let me come back to this. So if you guys have any doubts, it's also a Q&A session. It's not just talking about how to set up your camera for videos. So if you have any questions, please put up in the chat. I can answer it immediately while I'm searching for the monitor screen scroll through. So here it shows the list of icons for the screens to show. So here you have the complete list of icons that you can find, which is not what I was looking for. Playback images. Okay, I think this is it. Okay, so let me switch back to the screen. And let's go into this one. Okay, so setup option, display screen set. Unfortunately, okay, it's in operation customize. I'm in the wrong menu. Sorry, guys. So under operation customize, you can go to display screen display set, and here you can find what are the things that you can scroll through. So basically, for example, if you want to go to monitor is where we monitor the videos predominantly. You don't use EVF, and you can set which are the things that you want to see when you scroll through the display. If you have too many things, you'll be scrolling through too many things, which you don't want to do when you're at the field. So this one, I have selected only 3 of them. There's also no display option, which means it will clear out the screen. Some people like to do that, but I want to see all the information right there on the screen so that I make sure it's working or not. So I just have 3 options enabled, which really helps me. So if you want to turn off the other things that you don't use, you can turn it off here. And also it's there for both videos and photos. You cannot change it separately. It's always the same for both videos and photos, right? So yeah, it hardly takes a minute for you to search the unknowns in the help guide. So it's a very convenient tool. And let's talk about a few things, right? So if your screen is cluttered, if you think that your screen is cluttered, changing it to manual focus. So yeah, if you think your screen is cluttered, you can always pull it out. If you want these options on the screen, you can always pull it back in by scrolling, like using this touch function from the center to out to push it out, from side to center, it will bring it back. And these are the things I usually enable. And here we have the picture profile that I was talking about. We will go in depth into the log settings that I have in these, and it will be very convenient for you to switch between them. You don't have to go to the menu at all. So let me keep this picture profile at 1. Okay, and here we have the autofocus settings. Here I have the human detection. I can change it to whatever I want. You can either touch or you can use the scroll wheel, right? So scroll wheel will work only when you're in the function mode. So here let's talk about functions. Okay, and I hope everything is visible, guys. If you have any questions, you can let me know. Okay, the functions, I have set it up in this way. The place where you can set it up is actually going back into the display, and you can go to the dial customize or operation customize. Yeah, in the operation customize, you can see the function menu settings. In the function menu settings, you can set up the function screen for both photos and videos. I have set them both very close so that it's easy for me to change between different settings. Right, so here I have the frame guides, aspect ratio, so I don't have to think too much about the aspect ratio. And here, instead of the aspect ratio, I have the gamma assist. It will be very convenient if I show you after removing this. Okay, my desk is a bit cluttered, so please forgive me on that. Alright, so let me go to the gamma assist. It takes you to the setting if you want to change. These are the settings available that can go in the function button. And here, if I'm going to record, right, so this is the video mode and it says assist is on. So I click on this and I change to off. You can see that the LUT is not applied anymore. So this is called gamma assist. This is just helpful. This is just to help you to visualize how the image will look in Rec 703, Rec 709 format. All right, so with these things set up for quick access, right, so you can set up your camera for a few important stuff you use on the field, right? So first, starting with the picture profile, audio, then we have the image stabilization, then we have the autofocus mode. I set it to human. You can change it depending on what you want, and it's a very quickly changeable options. You can just scroll through the front dial whatever you want, and you can press the OK button. It will set it up. Autofocus continuous. I actually like to use the continuous autofocus mode whenever possible. In photo mode though, I use the DMF, I think it's called dynamic manual focus, which is like autofocus with manual focus assist. So that's something fantastic, which is not available for videos. And here we have the file format. We will jump into the file format, which is convenient for us to use. And let's get back to the function. So white balance is something I want to keep in manual white balance. So it's pretty easy to set actually. Let me show you how to set the white balance. Let's say you're in any scene, and if you have a gray card, so you can set the white balance for every single scene. For example, this scene, I want to set the white balance based on this color. It's gonna change to completely cool, but let's set it up. So you just need to press the OK button here, and it sets based on the point it was focusing. So it was very yellow a while ago, and now it has changed to much pleasing color. So this is the way you set the white balance for every scene. And going back, you have the touch operations. You can change it in whenever you need it. Here, this is for setting up the zoom, and okay, this is for focus map. Let's say your clear image zoom is enabled, you will not be able to use the focus map. So I'm going to disable this to show you the focus map. I use it sometimes when in a very difficult, challenging situations. I use the focus map. So here you can see whenever you see the subject as you want, which means the subject is in focus. So that's something you can keep in mind. Here, this part, the ball of the magic arm is in focus, right? So this is something I use to nail the focus, especially when in challenging situations. So whatever I need is either on my fingertip and on the buttons or on the function menu, right? So this is a subject recognition. I keep it on because the camera does a fantastic job in focus pulling. And here I have the focus area. So why do I have a redundant focus area? Sometimes I forget which button is set to the focus area. So it's always handy to keep it somewhere you can always find. And one more menu that I have put here is actually the My menu. So in My menu, I have two options. One is the viewfinder and the display LUT. You can always add more items. It's pretty simple to add. You can go to My menu settings, add items. Let's say you want to include the time-lapse settings, time-lapse videos especially. So you can go to the drive mode, interval shooter, and you can add the time-lapse menu. So if you want My menu, you want to add in the bottom, yes, add it. So it's a very convenient way to access your favorite or frequently used menus, right? So that's it. So this is the basic, right? So I have made sure everything is ready to set, but in what format am I going to record, right? So let's discuss about that. So once you're in the video mode, let's take a quick recap actually. So first thing is, like, we are going to use, I will put it back in the autofocus, and let me go back a bit. Yeah, so when you turn on the camera, the first thing you would do is to change to the shooting mode, right? So once you change to the shooting mode and turn on the camera, it's gonna say NTSC or PAL. I want to keep it at NTSC because it has the 24 frames per second recording option in XAVC HS mode. So the way I can access this is quickly clicking on the C3 button. So I have this 24 or 60, and that's why I prefer NTSC mode. In the PAL mode, there's only 50 FPS and 100 FPS option in HS mode. And the reason why I choose the HS mode instead of all other modes is because, one, the bitrate is low, which means it's not too hard on my 128GB card. So let me just quickly show this part. Let me talk from the beginning, right? So here you have other menus. I think you're familiar with this. It's like a quick glance for you to see all the menus or change any of the menu. And here is where the actual menu starts. And here we can see file formats. So choosing the right file format is very important for handling the files and for editing all the recorded files. So let's start with this. If you're going to choose XAVC, okay, depending on the output, right? So first, let's say that you want 10-bit for two colors, and if you want 10-bit for two colors, if you want 10-bit for 0 colors, depending on what you want, what is the look you're going for, if you're having green screen or if you're recording a very gradient screens, like for example, if you have all sort of colors on your background, if you're recording the sky, if you're recording some colorful event, there will be a lot of gradients of color, and during that point 10-bit 422 color space will be very helpful for you. And that's why I choose to shoot always in 10-bit 422 colors. So just giving you an example here, the HS mode has so many options to choose which bitrate you want to choose from, and also which color space you want to choose from. And depending on the file format, they might vary. So to put it simply, to have easier editing on your computer, you will choose XAVC SI 4K, but it will consume a lot of space in your hard disk as well as in your memory card. So let me select this and show you. It shows on my 128GB card, it shows I have 33 minutes left to record. And I think I do have a certain number of media in there, which let me quickly delete it, right? Let me format it for you and show you how much space it can handle. Okay, so a quick formatting will be very helpful for you anytime. And here you can see the recording format is XAVC SI 30 FPS, and it says 54 minutes, right? If I switch to 60 FPS, it's gonna give me just 27 minutes. It is going to record at 600 megabits per second, which means it's gonna consume a ton of data. So if you're going to shoot in 24 frames per second, SI mode is very suitable for you. You get some cinematic videos, you get a lot of editing flexibility as well. but the bitrate here is set to 240 megabits per second. Oh, sorry, 200 megabits per second. Yes, correct. So it's going to transfer those data into the memory card, which is capable of writing at 260 megabytes per second, which means 260 multiplied by 8 megabits per second. That's what it is. So I think you get the idea here. So if you're going to shoot at 24 frames per second, go with the SI mode. If you're going for 30 or 60 FPS, sorry, 60 FPS, then go to the HS mode. So what happens here in the HS mode is that it's going to compress the video files to a larger extent, giving you the same quality, but it's going to, the computer have to decompress in the post, which means it's going to be very, very, very heavy on your computer. And so that's why you should be choosing the 100M or whatever, right? So once you have selected this, it's going to write at 100 megabits per second, and if you choose 60 frames per second, it's going to write at 200 megabits per second. As we saw earlier, SI mode was recording at 240 megabits per second at 24 frames per second, which means it's going to consume a lot of power, etc., to transfer the data. Now let's choose this option, right? This is what my predominant recording modes in A6700. If I want 24 frames per second, I use my A7C2 to record. And let's go down. SNQ settings, I don't need it because I get what I want from the HS mode in the C3, from the C3 menu. Here we have the log shooting. Actually, let me come back to this point. I don't use the log shooting from the log shooting menu. Rather, I use the log shooting from the picture profile menu. So why, you may ask? So this is where the complications I have experienced should be established. Okay, I have been experimenting on a few modes in the past few days, and this is what is my conclusion. So number one, the proxy is a very convenient way for you to, okay, let me turn this off a bit. It's getting very hot. So proxies are a very convenient way for you to load the files on your computer and turn on the proxy, and you can, instead of generating the proxy on your software, you can use the proxies recorded from your camera to record, to edit the files, which is a very convenient way. That's what I figured out. But if you're shooting log, what happens is that these proxies, so let me turn this on again. So these proxies recorded for the log videos in the log shooting settings have the LUT baked into the proxies, which means the format that the proxies are recorded on is not the log format. It's actually, how to say, the baked in default picture profile format, which means that you will find it very challenging to edit in the post. So instead of that, I turn it off. I keep this log shooting off, and what I do instead is I go to the picture profile. Okay, I think I can access this from here. So let me quickly go here. The picture profile is actually in the exposure settings, color tone, and here picture profile. And if you set to off, you can see that it's the default color profile. This is what the proxies are filmed with in the log shooting on. But you turn that log shooting off, which means the picture profile list will be on, and you can choose any of the picture profiles, and you can change the gamma to S-log3, and you can change the color mode to S-gamut3 cine or S-gamut3, and you get the log shooting what you want from the picture profiles. And that's something is very convenient for me to record in the proxy without the log setting on, and with the proxies with the log files. So when we are color grading in the post, the proxies are still log files, which means that you get more convenience and flexibility in the post to color, to see accurately what you're doing. Otherwise there will be like a superimposition of the LUT on top of the proxies, which you don't want. And this is a very important thing that no one talks about. You may find it very confusing, but it's actually pretty simple. And you can also add more LUTs here. You can import LUTs, and these LUTs will be helpful for you to use it in the picture profile as well. So let's take a look at that. So when you add the user LUT, yeah, you can bring the color mode to any of these. So this is something you can check it out. I don't play with the LUTs baked in, even for the monitoring purpose. Those are for very cinematic people. For beginners, I think this should be more than enough. Doing everything, all the LUT calculations in the post will be more beneficial for you. All right, so if you're a kind of guy who shoot SI format and you don't need the proxies, then you should be good to go. If you're shooting SI format, you don't need proxies at all. The computer can handle the load very easily because the files are not too compressed. But if you don't, if you're shooting HS, I think picture profile mode is the way to go. And this is the setting that you need to choose. All right, so all the LUTs will be off. You cannot embed the LUT. All right, so the embed LUT option is available only when you shoot the log format. So let me show you. Shooting log format will not be available if you turn on the picture profile. So if you turn it on, the picture profiles will not be available. And embed LUT is the option that actually bakes in the LUT onto the footage, which you don't want. You will lose a lot of dynamic range. Even for the quick quick processing of the images, you don't want it. But let's say you want to send out your footage quickly, there's the option that you can choose. You can record in the proxy, and you can use the proxy files to send out quick videos. So let me show you that as well. So under proxy, you have a few settings. You can either choose XAVC SHD or XAVC HSHD, which is actually 10-bit colors. And this is a fantastic option for a quick turnaround. You can even choose to shoot at 16 megabits per second and 10-bit colors, which means you get more fidelity. And in that case, what happens here is, let's say we choose SI mode, you get smaller files that the computers can handle when it comes to the proxy files. Even the phones can handle. The LUT is baked in, and you can even enable some creative looks, and you can edit those files very quickly. But you also have a copy of SI files which you can later edit in the post. That's a convenient option for you. But if you're not shooting in the SI mode, if you're shooting in the HS mode, I would rather recommend you to choose the picture profile mode and turn off the log. So that's something you have to keep in mind. And I don't shoot in SI mode because whenever I'm traveling, I have limited option to keep changing the memory cards, and I want as much data to be there in the memory card until I go back to the room and I offload the data. Otherwise, I don't have enough space on the memory card. So HS gives me more efficient files in that way. And also, I have terabytes of hard disk, terabytes and terabytes of hard disk of all the older footage and projects which I don't bring myself to delete yet. But looking at way the things are going, if I find a much more convenient way of editing these HS files, then I might think about throwing them away. So that's something I'm looking to do. And also there are a lot of vlogs that are gonna come into our channel, because I think I have figured out a way to generate transcode and edit those with the proxy files without increasing a lot of memory. So there are two ways editing HS files in the computer. So I think I want to touch upon that topic as well within a few minutes. Let me just see if there is any setting that I actually want to talk about. So let's scroll through the other settings here. So we spoke about the proxy settings. Okay, lens compensation, I would want you to keep it on all the time, auto. It's very convenient, especially if you're shooting with the Sony lenses. And the format, no, we just formatted this card, so there is nothing to format. When it comes to the display media info, okay, sorry. Actually, we should go to the file handling. I leave the file handling with the serial number on, and the file settings, you see here, yeah, when it comes to the title names, I want the title name to be A6700. It will show A670, the last three numbers, like this. And the file format is standard. You can change it to however you want. You want the date plus time, you can have it that way as well. And file numbers, I want it to be series unless I want to reset, unless I don't want it to be reset unless I sell the camera. So that's something to think about. Series count, reset, no. Okay, cancel. Yeah. All right, let's go to the camera. Set memory. I don't want to set any memory that I will forget. The camera might remember, but I might forget, so that's the thing. So I never set up anything on the memory. And silent mode doesn't matter in the movie, so that's okay. Lens release without lens. This is helpful if you're shooting with a dummy lens, like a manual lens from 7 Artisans or TT Artisans or Lava, Venus Optics, etc. So anti-flicker set, the variable shutter. If you turn it on, people might think that this is very useful, but I think it's only useful if you're shooting, yeah, like 4K 60 frames per second. This 4K 60 frames per second is not actually 4K 60 frames per second. It's 4K 59.97 frames per second. So you can see here it goes to this value, 119.9. So if you're too keen on shooting at this frame rate, you can turn it on and keep it at that. It also helps in case of having some flickering lighting. And in Thailand, especially if you have flickering lighting, you might want to change it to that frequency. It's usually like 50, so I want to change it to 100. And at 100 shutter speed, it won't flicker at all. So if your frame rate is 60, you would ideally want it to keep at double the frame rate. But if you have a lot of flickering lights, it's okay to change it back to 100. You will have that motion blur that you might want. So, but if you're using it to slowing down, you might want a much cleaner video. So that's something to say. I will just leave it at, yeah, like 119.9. Yeah, this should be okay. All right, and okay. Here, audio settings, I keep my level as low as possible, especially when I use the microphones. The microphones that I use mostly on the camera is the Rode Wireless Pro and the Sennheiser MK600. And for those microphones, audio level 9 works fine. And the wind noise reduction, I keep it off, so that's okay. Time code, I don't use time code. It's too complicated for me and it increases my workflow. It's not convenient, especially when I'm traveling, so it's okay not to use it. So steady shot, I keep it active. Steady shot adjustment, I don't wanna, I haven't explored this manual. What does it mean? Oh, okay, so let's say you want to have your steady shot. Depending on what lens you use, you can set it up with the manual mode. And I don't want to set it up manually every single time I change lenses. I change lenses often, so I keep it at auto. All right, so zoom. So this is the clear image zoom I was talking about. I have set it in the ISO button, and I have set the ISO button on the rear wheel, so that's very convenient for me. And let's talk about the speed. So you can change the speed how you want the clear image zoom to be, especially when you're using a remote control. So that's something you can something you can think about. Okay, grid line display. So there are two things. One is the marker and the other is the grid line display. So okay, this is emphasized record display. So it's the red color boundary around the screen when you start recording. So that's what it means. But the grid line display and the markers, they kind of contradict each other. So it's like you would use gridline display for photos and the markers for videos. Markers are the ones that gives you the aspect ratio of the cinescope or whatever. So these are the marker. You have different marker options here as well. I set it to 2:1, which is more of the videos I'm going for from now. So I will keep it at 2:1, which is kind of wider than 16:9 aspect ratio. That's the default in most cameras. So let me show you here. 17:9 is the DCI format. 16:9 is the, okay, you don't, okay, 9:16. Where did the 16:9 go? Let's see 9:16. You might use it for the vertical content. Let's say you're the kind of person who want to crop in on the sides so that you have something to be displayed. So you can do a 9:16 aspect ratio marker, but there should be 16:9 as well. I don't see it here for some reason. 16:9. Okay, so why I don't see it here is because when you turn it off, this is 16:9. So that's why it's not there. See the confusions that the menu options give. So, and 17:9 is actually the DCI format that you might see. So this is the up and down, right? These markers indicate the DCI levels. I want to squeeze in even further to this level. Now this is 2:1 ratio, so I can put whatever I want in the square format in either of the sides. So I find this format to be much more convenient for me. Even I'm going to export in this format in the future. Safety zone, it will give you some safety zone of 80%, beyond which you don't want the subject to go. And guided frames, no need. Self timer, yeah. So ISO range. So you might ask me, hey, so what if I use the ISO range? You can set it here since you're using the video. So I might actually go to, so this is the problem, right? So here ISO range limit for photos and videos. You see the icon here, which means this is applicable for both photos and videos. You don't want that. So that's where the first menu option comes into picture. So once you go here, you go to operation customize, and here you have the different set of stills and images, and here you choose the ISO whether you want it to be different or not. Since I have set it to be different, let me go back and let me change the ISO. For some reason ISO is under the exposure, so I keep it at base ISO. I come back to this ISO range limit. I can range it to, the minimum is 800 and the maximum is 16,400. And how this will help me is when I switch back to photos, the ISO is, the auto ISO starts from 100, but the manual ISO unfortunately starts from 800. So this is how it's, yeah, so this is like both photos and videos. This is what I was explaining. If you set it here, it's gonna affect my photos as well. So I want to keep it like this for now, and individually, right, individually we will have to change it. So I keep the video ISO and I keep the video ISO and the photo ISO separately, so it's very beneficial that way. As I explained earlier, I don't want to change this ISO range limit. And exposure increments, you don't want to adjust that. The face priority, yeah, it's off right now, blah blah blah. So select LUT. So here's where you can choose to display the LUT that you want. In a bit I will explain where to actually display the LUT if you're going to shoot the log format. So here you can, in the manage user LUT, you can import or export a LUT. So that's something very convenient in the A6700. And select LUT, it will show you all the available LUTs and the user LUTs which you can import. I'll cancel this for the time being. because I don't want to use any other LUT from the standard conversion LUT. Conversion LUT is the LUT that converts the log format to the linear format, and that's exactly what I usually do. And going on to the zebras, this might be helpful for you to visualize the exposure. I keep it on and I set at 90. But at 90, I want the exposure to be 1.7. So I do expose to the right, ETTR. And I set the zebras at 90. When I see the first zebra mark, I know that it's going to be exposed. And so if I want to go to the exposed look, then that's fine. I would go to the white mark, so it will show the exposed part of the zebra. So let me explain this way. So now we are seeing the zebras here, right? Let's say if I want to expose further, the zebras will keep on increasing, and at one point it will become very white, which means it's like you cannot bring that back at all. So still, these exposed regions can be brought back in the post using the dynamic range settings. But if you go beyond that, now it's like unsalvageable. So you have to keep in mind that there's a limitation to use the zebras show the limitation to how much information that you can bring back, or where it goes unsalvageable. So zebras are very important for me, especially in a very contrasty conditions, like let's say this is indoors and the rear backside is the outdoors. So these conditions, it'll be very helpful. And let's move on to the next topic. Focus modes, depending on how you use it, you have to experiment and find out which setting is fine. I use the default settings, it works fantastic for me. And autofocus, yeah, these are some gimmicks that you can play with. Now moving on to the next one. Okay, this is circle of focus points. So this is, I said to do not circulate. So what happens is, like, if you press up, it will still not go up. These are the focus points, right? It will not go down. And if you do it to circulate, right? So what happens here is, if you click on these focus points, it will go up and come back from the down. So it will circulate, which I don't want. I don't mind it to circulate. I'm okay with either way. Okay, so subject recognition. Autofocus is like pretty much default for me in this camera. I don't change it. But what I actually change is actually this part, the peaking. Peaking display is something I use in a very tricky and challenging situation. So when you want critical focus, you might want to use this peaking functionality. And I set it to high and red, and this really helps. So for example, if I turn this on, so you can see these areas are showing red color, they are in focus. And I change it, the peaking display is turning on and off. So it helps you to visualize the focus area. And that is something you might use. So I have actually set it, I haven't set it here because I use the focus map. Focus map is again very, very useful in many cases. And if you go back, if you don't use the clear image zoom, you can enable the focus map. See? And this is more useful for me because I can actually see the things I want to see instead of showing them in the color. So I find this to be more useful. Okay, now view mode. So this is playback settings. It's all personalized. Like, you can think about the playback settings. Yeah, this one, I think you can put it in the airplane mode, the connections if you're not using. But sometimes I use the Bluetooth to connect with some apps, like the Creators app for the mobile phone, and it works fantastic. All right, so yeah, the setup menu. And here there are a few options like I shown earlier. So these can be set up for customized keys for photos and videos, and the playback settings and the function menu settings that we discussed earlier. These are my settings. If you find them useful, go with them. If you don't, it's fine. You can take a screenshot. And let's go to different set for stills and videos, display screen, display set. Okay, record with or without shutter. I record with shutter. Okay, let's say for example, now there's memory card. Now I'm removing the memory card. So there's no memory card. And I go to the photos. Cannot open the shutter. Inside the memory card is not there. So it will not allow you to record without the shutter. But if it is on, okay, good. I guess it's for videos. I'll just keep it off. All right. So I think we are pretty much done with this. And yeah, these are a default. Actually, the monitor, I think I have showed you, I have set it in C2 button or C1 button, which is very convenient for me to switch between them. And that's it, guys. If you have any questions, please shoot. I don't see anyone sticking until here. So I think with this, we will end this live stream. We are pretty much done with whatever I wanted to show. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can put it up in the comments. Until we meet the next time, next weekend, stay tuned to the channel. I welcome you all with any questions you might have for any topic on the Sony cameras and lenses and how to use them. So meet you in the next video. Until then, stay tuned. Leaving from you, Jay. Peace.